Everyone, welcome to today's chat, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Pilar. I lead public engagement at the Rainforest Alliance, and I'm incredibly honored to moderate this chat today, which hopefully will turn out insightful and share something you didn't know. We'll be talking about healing agriculture and how one of the biggest threats to biodiversity and climate can be turned into an opportunity. And our guests today are some of the trailblazers in the space. With me, I have my colleagues Juliana Jaramillo, Regenerative Agriculture Lead, and Martin Noponen, Director of Nature. Welcome both. How are you today?
Hello, Pilar.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Wonderful. I always want to start with an icebreaker, while we wait also for more people tuning in. And for those of you joining us, feel free to submit your questions in the LinkedIn chat or YouTube chat as we are monitoring, and we'll be answering some also towards the end. And so I want to start with a quote that I think summarizes very well our thoughts at the Rainforest Alliance about sustainability. That is a journey, and the final destination is regeneration. And the quote is from Dr. Vandana Shiva, and it reads, "Regenerative agriculture provides answers to the soil crisis, the food crisis, the health crisis, the climate crisis, and the crisis of democracy." So while we always say there's no single solution to the crisis we're facing, this might get close. I'm asking Juliana and Martin, tell us a little bit who you are, what you do, and first reactions also to this quote.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Juliana Jaramillo. I am the lead regenerative agriculture at the Rainforest Alliance. I am an agronomist and an entomologist by training, and basically a nature lover and committed to advancing a type of agriculture that can reconnect us with nature, with the power of nature.
Hi everyone, my name is Martin Noponen. I'm the Director for Nature, and I lead a small team of environmental experts at Rainforest Alliance. We support our work across the various intervention strategies that we have focused on: the standards work, standards and assurance, the landscape communities work, advocacy, and also tailored supply chain services. And yeah, I'm a big nature lover, of course, as well. I take most fun and pride in managing my own forest in Finland, which you can probably see this side behind me. And regarding the quote, I think, it clearly highlights what a powerful concept and approach regenerative agriculture can be, that it really has the ability to address some of the biggest challenges of our time. But I think it also shows that all of them, so the soil crisis, the food crisis, the climate crisis, crisis of democracy, are very closely interlinked and connected, and I think therefore need to be addressed holistically and not in isolation. So regenerative agriculture, I think, is a good starting point for us to address those challenges.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Martin, and thanks so much, Juliana, for being here today. So the first question I want to ask you is really related also what we read in the news on social media, and it's oftentimes full of reports about the biodiversity crisis, but also about climate change. So I was wondering if you could help us to understand a little bit how they relate to each other, and also what role does agriculture play in this mix as well. Juliana, maybe we can start from you.
Sure. Pilar. So one cannot really separate the biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis. They are interconnected and they exacerbate each other. So in terms of biodiversity, for example, scientific studies continue to highlight the dramatic decline in biodiversity. And one of the causes of this is climate change. For example, the 2019 report by IPBES is the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, which is the global authority on the issue, estimates that around 1 million animal and plant species face extinction, many within decades, unless we really take a serious action to reduce this biodiversity loss. So the main cause of these sad and worrying loss of species are human activities that might disturb or even destroy species habitats and ecosystems. Overconsumption, pollution, population growth, and also climate change are the main drivers, and many of these are associated with the agricultural sector, as we know. So to give you an example, to make it more tangible on how biodiversity laws and climate change are interconnected, just like to ask you to picture a lush and beautiful tropical forest like the Amazon, full of life and millions of species, big and small. And then imagine these forests being slashed and burned to make space for, I don't know, for soybean production or for grazing pastures or cattle. Then this forest goes from being a source of ecosystem stability and from being a carbon absorber to being an emitter, releasing tons of CO2 into the atmosphere.
That's super insightful. Thank you so much, Juliana. I really love how you put on the link on over consumption and population growth as well. Martin, is there anything you want to add on this topic?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as Juliana already mentioned, the link to climate change in this conversation, of course, is very evident. So the intensive management of agricultural land and the conversion of, in particularly, high carbon stock ecosystems, so such as forests, to lower carbon stock ecosystems like croplands, and can release a lot of GHG emissions, and is exactly what continues to fuel also the climate emergency, the climate crisis. And I hope you can see the slide on the screen on the right-hand side. It shows the breakdown of global GHG emissions per sector. And as you can see, about 1/4 of all emissions come from the land use sector, and that's incredible. I mean, imagine that's almost double the transport sector, which includes things like shipping, air travel, road transport. So it's really, really significant. And the emissions in the land use sector, as Juliana already mentioned, have to do in large part with land use change. So things like converting grasslands to crop production systems or existing forests into things like palm oil plantations for agricultural productions. The other big component, of course, not to forget, are the emissions that are associated with the actual production and management of those systems, and include things like cattle rearing or fertilizer production, fertilizer application, and that makes up the other big component of the land use emissions that are associated with agriculture, but also with forestry. So I think it's clear that what we eat, how we produce it, how we farm it, is clearly very strongly linked to climate change and the impact we have on that, and continues to be a major contributor to the levels of climate warming CO2 in the atmosphere. The good news, of course, is, and there is some good news, is that although agriculture is a GHG emitter, it can also be a very important tool and an opportunity to mitigate climate change. And not only that, but also at the same time really help to protect and enhance biodiversity, and with that build much more resilient production systems overall, and that's what we're after. So I think it's really important that we as an agriculture community look for solutions together to really work on reversing the curve of biodiversity loss and work on reducing global warming. And one such solution is regenerative agriculture, and that's what we want to talk to you about a little bit more today.
Great, thank you so much, Bo, and thanks, Martin, also for bringing on the positive news. We always need positive news, I think, when we're talking about this topic, so extremely grateful. We've been talking already a lot about agriculture, and I just wanted to deep dive a little bit more onto the role of regenerative agriculture, and does it difference really from conventional agriculture? And if you can also please let us know essentially what really it means for us at the Rainforest Alliance.
Yes. Do you want me to take that question?
Yes, thank you, Juliana.
Good. Okay. So first, let's see what is conventional agriculture. So conventional agriculture is what we got from the the green revolution. So it's an agriculture whose purpose was just to produce large amounts of food to solve a famine problem. But these agriculture largely overlook the power of nature. Conventional agriculture means having these large extensions of the same, usually of the same crop variety. In this case, it's coffee, but it's soybean, maize, etc. And these crops are very, very demanding in terms of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which are not only costly, but they're good greenhouse gas emitters. Also, soils in this type of agriculture are often not managed in the best way. And this is a type of agriculture that aggravates both the biodiversity loss and the climate crisis. However, as Martin was saying, and here is the little bit of positive news, is agriculture can be turned into an opportunity. So in the face of climate change and biodiversity loss, well-managed agriculture can be a greater force for adaptation and resilience. And when we speak about resilience, we not only talk about ecosystem, so natural resilience to extreme weather events, etc., but also economic and the impact on the livelihoods. So regenerative agriculture takes this conservation and rehabilitation approach to food production and the land management, and it focuses on the potential of agriculture to provide a multitude of ecosystem services. And by this, we mean the essential life support services that humans get from nature for free, such as clean air, fresh water supplies, pollination, pest control, carbon storage in healthy soils or trees. And they all contribute to this climate, ecosystem, and livelihood resilience. Now, for the Rainforest Alliance, regenerative agriculture comprises a broad set of principles and practices under the umbrella of climate-smart agriculture. Yeah, so regenerative agriculture takes then this agroecology and an integrated system management approach, aiming to increase on and off farm biodiversity, enhance ecosystem services, and increase general agroecosystem resilience, thus leading to resilient livelihoods. So this way of farming is based on taking advantage of the strengths of the ecosystems, meaning working with nature and not against it, ultimately enabling a reduction of, for example, harmful chemicals like synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, and an increasing farm productivity by reducing costs of production, because you don't need to apply the external inputs as much. So to give you examples of systems and practices commonly promoted by us in the Rainforest Alliance, we have a strong focus on conservation agriculture, meaning on soil health, and on low input use. For example, applying only what is needed, where is needed, and only when is needed. And finally, last but not least, agroforestry. The use of shade trees together with the crop is very important. So rather than depleting the resources available to us, the fundament lies in enhancing and enriching the environment by conserving this biodiversity, promoting healthier soils, cleaner water, reduce chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and these together increases the farm resilience and leads to more prosperous farmers. So farmers being compensated for making a good contribution to nature through agriculture.
Well, thank you so much, Juliana. I really love also, especially the interconnection you put to people and nature, right? Because it's always like the same. So one cannot thrive without the other. And I think it's important that we look at regenerative agriculture as also a way to benefit, the local community really, and to expand on the livelihoods as well, and obviously benefit their lives as well. It's so it was extremely interesting, the whole aspect really. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but just wanted to expand a little bit on the interconnection, essentially the relationship of regenerative agriculture with climate change specifically. And since you talk now about climate smart agriculture, I just wanted to also clarify for the audience if climate smart agriculture and regenerative agriculture are the same. And maybe we'll go over to Martin this time.
Yeah, thank you, Pilar. It's a very good question and something that I think often creates a bit of confusion. As Julian explained, I think regenerative agriculture places really a strong emphasis on creating and also enabling more resilient and healthy production systems. So the focus is really on building back some of the many ecosystem functions that we all rely on, and then of course also making sure to maintain those. Climate smart agriculture, in its approach is very similar as well, in that it focuses on implementing context-specific solutions that build resilience, so work on climate change adaptation, both at the socioeconomic and ecosystem level. It ensures food security, but also, where possible, works on mitigating climate change. I think the most important part of climate smart agriculture, and that is really what for me makes climate smart agriculture smart, is the ability to assess the importance to assess the particular climate risks, and really understanding the threats and the opportunities, the outlook on how things might change and develop, going forward, and then really focus on developing suitable responses to address those accordingly. So profiling, understanding the detail of your situation is really key. A farmer, for example, a coffee farmer that is facing challenges that have to do with water shortages and drought conditions, for example, will need a very different strategy to address that than another farmer that is confronted with frequent flooding, for example. So understanding your context is really, really key. And for that, we use a variety of tools to assess the climate risks, the vulnerabilities of a landscape or a farm, and of course take the local ecosystem and the specific crop requirements into account, with the aim of finding the right combination of solutions to manage a specific farm. And regenerative agriculture and the practices that fall under that umbrella form a crucial part of those solutions that we promote to achieve this. So for us at Rainforest Alliance, we see the two really going together hand in hand.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Martin. I really love also the way, it's not just about resilience, but it's also about giving you the tools really to also prepare for the future, right? Because as you rightfully said, climate resilience is not just about one thing at one time that is gonna essentially be duplicated in different conditions at the same time, but it's about also learning and adapting. I think that's extremely important. So thanks so much for sharing with us. If you were to kind of summarize it for us, if we're looking at the benefits or the positive outcomes that can be achieved through the implementation of regenerative climate smart agriculture, what are they? And maybe I'll go back to Juliana this time.
Yes, thanks, Pilar. I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of the biodiversity side of benefits, and then I'll let Martin talk about the climate smart part. Let's put it this way. So, as you can see in this photo, when you look at a farm that is diverse like this, you cannot imagine the amount of benefits that having an agroecosystem like this has. So there are plenty of benefits derived from adopting an agriculture that, as I said before, works with nature and not against it. So just to name some of the most important are, for example, better soil health, meaning an improved chemical, physical, and biological conditions of the soil, which because everything in nature is interconnected, leads to better nourished plants and also resilient crops that can better tolerate the damage of pests and diseases. And this better toleration, or this being able to withstand attacks of pests and diseases, leads to a lower reliance on pesticides. No. And then at the same time, having less pesticides, for example, in the system means that there are more beneficial insects like natural enemies of the pest or pollinators, which can help deliver a higher production or more quality of these crops that we grow. So the diversity of plants and trees in plantations, for example, also through the use of agroforestry, can have multiple benefits, but often also lead to higher prices that are paid to the farmer. So shade trees can be a source of alternative income for farmers, and here we go back to the kind of the social aspect of regenerative agriculture, and better nutrition, for example, if those trees are fruiting trees. And then I let Martin talk a bit about the climate benefits.
Okay, yeah, no, I think, you know, the only thing to add, of course, is the climate change mitigation potential of those practices as well. So in addition to all of the biodiversity and regenerative benefits of, for example, better soil health and the use of agroforestry practices, many of the activities also result in added benefit in sequestering carbon, in storing carbon, acting as a carbon pool, and so contributing to climate change mitigation. So, for example, and Juliana mentioned that already in terms of the soil management and conservation practices, soil organic matter through mulching and composting can hugely benefit the amount of carbon that is sequestered and stored in the soil. Soil, of course, is a much bigger carbon pool than, for example, above ground biomass trees and forests. So conserving, managing this aspect regeneratively is of course of vital importance. And then there's of course the carbon that is sequestered in the plants, you know, the things in the shrubs and trees that form a key component of any agroforestry system. And can take on many forms. So most of us know it as a form of shade to crops, but it can also be as a windbreak or a boundary planting or live fence that can provide fodder, for example, or for animals or nutrient inputs to the actual system. And of course also create habitats. So yeah, these regenerative agriculture practices have a crucial role to play when it comes to climate change mitigation.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Bo. I think we have quite a good grasp of theory by now. And I'll take this opportunity to also remind the audience to feel free to ask us questions in different chats we're monitoring. We got already some good ones and we'll get back to you shortly. But from theory, right, we need to get to practice. And so my next question to you, Bo, is, have you ever carried out any projects with regenerative climate smart agriculture? Do you have any experience in the field or some great examples that you'd like to share with us today? And you, Juliana, maybe you want to go first?
I think Martin.
Oh, Martin. Okay.
Like to have a
example. Sure. No, of course, we have worked on this extensively, Pilar. I mean, regenerative agriculture isn't new to the Rainforest Alliance, and in essence, our approach in the past to agriculture has been along the same lines as regenerative agriculture and includes many of the principles that we have already discussed and we have laid out. I think what is more novel in our recent approach is really honing down on the contextualization aspect that I talked about earlier, the risk assessment and understanding the risks and opportunities. So not just the risk and the threats, but also the opportunities to develop more tailored responses to those challenges. And I think a good example here is a project that we started some 5-6 years ago in Ghana and Peru, which was funded by CCAF's, the Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security Research program by the CGR centers, and we collaborated with a number of partners, including SEAT, IATA, Root Capital, Sustainable Food Lab. to focus really on creating some profiles, impact maps of climate threats and vulnerabilities for cocoa and coffee in those two countries, as is indicated in that first step on the slide. And that has really helped us. This is an approach that we're replicating and now throughout our projects. It's also being included in our new standards. So contextualization, risk assessment is a key component of that. We then use that to translate this, so step 2, into practices that are very context and region specific and are aimed at addressing some of those opportunities and risks that we have identified. So depending on the severity of your profile, the risk profile, you would have a different focus on and prioritization of practices and that you would be focused on implementing. So again, for example, a farmer that is likely to suffer from drought conditions throughout the year needs a different focus on implementing practices such as improving soil's capacity to absorb and retain water, composting, mulching, cover crops, weed management are some of those conservation strategies that they would focus on. We then also carried out a cost-benefit analysis of those practices to really understand, in particular, the costs of implementing some of those activities that can help prioritize investment, and is also there to find supporting finance. So building what we call a stepwise investment pathway was really important to understand how certain investments will translate into a gradient of productivity and resilience if you choose one or a series of practices over another. And last, I mean, to enable impact at scale, this is step 4, the graphic on the mountain, and also, you know, to enhance ecosystem services that go beyond the farm level. We're implementing this approach and the practices that are associated with it under our landscape efforts. And so the maps that we have created, for example, in Ghana, have been implemented in various landscapes across the cocoa belt. And we have also recently started a new IKEA Foundation funded project in Mount Kenya, that is doing exactly that. So understanding the risks, the opportunities through a thorough assessment on the ground, and then developing a climate smart regenerative practices that both the coffee and tea farmers that we're working with can apply.
Thanks so much, Martin. And I think landscape management is also quite an inspiring and interesting topic that maybe we'll chat also another time about. But speaking about impacts, right, and, you know, essentially the impact on the ground, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more what the impacts are of the Rainforest Alliance when it comes to regenerative climate smart agriculture. Maybe this time, Juliana.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's like a little summary of what Martin was telling us in a practical example, but it's like the starting point is this climate change risk assessment and contextualization, which is, as he said, the smart part of it. And then for us, we can show some impact at individual, system, at landscape level, and the actions that you take at the individual and the system levels have a repercussion at this landscape level. So at the plot level, the focus is then, as I said before, on soil health, on increasing plant diversity that leads to healthier crops, better nutrient availability, carbon sequestration, and resilience to pests and diseases. And here, the Rainforest Alliance promotes this holistic approach to farming, to soil management, and to increasing plant diversity. Now, if we go to the system level, the focus is on protecting and managing natural ecosystems and, for example, also enhancing ecosystem services, or, for example, agroforestry systems. And here the Rainforest Alliance standard has mainstream biodiversity conservation in all farming activities. This leads to the landscape level, where the focus is on the climate change adaptation and mitigation, forest connectivity, and others. And when you look at really at the impact, Rainforest Alliance farms have have demonstrated higher forest quality, carbon stocks, increased habitat connectivity, and lowers forest degradation and deforestation. So this is how kind of the whole picture is completed.
Great. Martin, do you want to add anything else before I jump to the last question and then start taking questions from the audience?
No, I think Juliana has summarized it very well. Thank you.
Great. Well, it sounds to me that regenerative climate smart agriculture is amazing and is indeed healing, as we also put in the title for today's discussion. I was wondering, is there anything we can do to make sure that is adopted in a widespread way? Anything we can support from a Rainforest Alliance side, obviously, but also, as industry in general?
I think, if I may, I think the short answer is something we call shared responsibility. So to make the sectors truly sustainable or regenerative, we believe that all the supply chain actors must play a role. And to scale up this adoption of regenerative agriculture, this should not fall only on the shoulders of farmers. We need inclusive supply chains where both the risks and the value are shared, and farmers need to be supported during this transition from a conventional to a regenerative agriculture model. This takes time and this takes resources and so on, and ultimately rewarded for making a positive contribution to nature through agriculture. And then I pause here and let Martin talk a bit.
Yeah, I think, in addition to that, some more practical steps, I think, that need to be considered are, for example, clearly articulating the business case of implementing regenerative agriculture practices. So what the benefits of implementation of those will look like over the long term for the farmers actually practicing those, because I think that is always a challenge to visualize, immediately what the benefits might look like. And of course, many of those practices will have some upfront investment, in the transition phase when these are being implemented. I think one thing that might help this, and we've had good experiences, very good experiences in the past, is setting up, for example, demonstration farms that not only enable exchange of lessons learned and insights from a regional perspective, from a local perspective, when farmers experiment, but also in really helping to showcase how a system that is trimmed to address certain challenges and opportunities can be designed and how it is being managed and run those. I think Juliana already mentioned it, making available finance that can support the transition phase and implementation of those more costly activities, of course, is crucially important. Maybe linking it in that sense to, there's of course currently a lot of interest by private sector partners and companies in particular by setting themselves emission reduction targets against science-based target initiatives and similar. There are opportunities maybe going forward to link investment, in particular in the agriculture and forestry sector, into activities similar to payment for ecosystem services that could finance some of those activities and practices that we already described, which have that dual benefit of not only increasing resilience, but also improving biodiversity and have that climate mitigation benefit to it as well. And then, of course, I think last, the enabling environment needs to be addressed, needs to be there. So in particular, perverse incentives or policies that might exist and that do not encourage farmers to implement some of those practices. Examples would be, land tenure, tree tenure policies that exist in some countries that are prohibitive and discourage farmers to go down that route. So, of course, that would need to be addressed as well.
Well, thanks so much, Bo. In just roughly 35 minutes, you took us through what we read in the news, the theory behind regenerative agriculture, the difference between the different types of agriculture, also brought us on the field, really, because I think it's the most important thing, really, that we can learn about regenerative agriculture, that it works and it really can heal the crisis that we're facing right now. And finally, also sort of call to action, right, for widespread adoption. So it was a really wonderful chat, and I'm grateful now to take a couple of questions as well from our audience. They were super interested, so we have a couple. The first one is by, and I hope I'm saying your name right, is David Hine. What are the key challenges to the adoption of healing agriculture? I'm not sure if there's any one of you that wants to go first.
I can go first, and I think the answer of this question is pretty much we gave to the last question you posed on scaling up the model, but the other way. So all the practical points that Martin was taking you through, for example, it is. First, the understanding of the benefits of this transition. So what are the actual economic, very practically speaking for a farmer, the practical economic benefits of this, and showcasing, for instance, that this transition from a conventional to the regenerative model takes time, takes money, but after you are in the regenerative model, the benefits are incredible, and they just kind of increase exponentially, because what you're using is the strengths of the ecosystem of nature. And then after some time, you just reduce costs of production, so meaning your productivity goes up, you increase the quality, etc., etc. So information, to sum up, like information, finance, knowing what are the benefits, and giving and being able to convey trust in that this model is really going to work, I would say. I don't know if Martin would like to add something else.
Yeah, no, I think you said it. I think key from my perspective is really understanding and having the know-how what the interactions look like, of practices that you're putting forward. The other thing that I would maybe stress, because that is the component, the aspect that's so important to me, is really making your system future-proof, and therefore for that, understanding what the context might look like 5-10 years down the line is quite challenging to do, and particularly at farm level. So working on creating that understanding and what tree species might be suitable to a new context in interaction with the crops that you're growing and everything else around it, I think can be a challenge. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Bo. And before we jump to the next question, I see from Emilio Bonnet, his farm has just been certified as RA. So congratulations on behalf of all of us, and welcome to the Alliance. The next question, we can go to Kelly. You talk about your work with small-scale farmers, but it's possible to scale up regenerative agricultural practices on a large scale. Aren't the big agri-businesses doing the most damage? How do we get them to embrace sustainability? So these are actually 3 questions in one.
Yes. So first, yeah, the work with the small-scale farmers is incredibly important, because it's most of the agriculture is carried out by small scale. But the big farms, of course, there's lots to do there. But they are very practical practices and that can be implemented in these systems, really, and that bring a lot of benefit. And there are studies showing that you in large operations, you can also reduce costs and increase quality, etc. And they refer, for example, to something I mentioned before, that is conservation agriculture. So, for example, the use of no tillage, so not disturbing the soil, the use of cover crops, never leave the soil bare, the use of precision fertilization, all the measures that take care of the soil. Also, Martin was mentioning, using trees in the border or fencing or having smaller plots helps tremendously to increase diversity in these big farms. There are also simple measures that can increase the number of beneficial insects and like natural enemies or pollinators, which are kind of borders of natural vegetation or flowering strips. And it has been shown that they help a lot in pest control and can reduce the costs. Implementing integrated pest management, integrated weed management, many is a matter of calculating the benefits, so kind of being aware of the benefits of adopting this model, and daring to do it in a different way, questioning this imposed paradigm of the agriculture under the Green Revolution.
Well, thank you so much, Juliana. Martin, you want to add anything?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, you take a large number of small-scale farmers and put them together, you have large-scale impact, of course, and that's exactly the model that we're following in many of our landscape interventions. And then you have the opportunity also to move beyond just your farm-level interventions, at community level, focus on activities that have to do with restoration of other degraded land areas that, of course, also then further the impact on ecosystem services. So it's not just singled out on small-scale farming. It can very quickly create also a ripple effect on how to operate it at landscape level.
Great. I think this is actually is answering also partially the question from Jos Lemons. Sorry, I hope I'm saying your name right. Which was asking, just looking at the farm, what is your definition of regenerative agriculture in a few words? So I think you partially answer. Just checking in case you want to add anything else.
No, you are right. It's just you focus on soil, plant diversity, reducing external inputs, and having natural vegetation, respecting the natural vegetation.
I would refer back to something that I said earlier, and that was my summary of what Juliana had defined, is creating and enabling more resilient and healthy production systems that help to build back some of the ecosystem functions. That's what it really defines it for me. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we have still a couple of questions, but we unfortunately we're running out of time. So I just want to give you the opportunity to share final remarks, Juliana, Martin, and then I'll close the session. And for those of you who asked questions and were able to answer, you can always reach out, info@ra.org, and we'll be able to answer. So Juliana, Martin, anything else you want to share?
No, thank you for inviting us. I mean, it's been great to be able to talk about this topic. It's very close to our hearts, and we are very passionate about this work. So if you want to learn more about it, of course, you can always reach out or visit our web pages. There's a lot of information on the topic that we have produced, and yeah, we look forward to continuing the work with some of you going forward. Thank you.
Yes, and from my side, just thank you for having me. It has been really great chatting with you both, and thank you to everyone who's listening out there.
Well, thank you both, and I think your passion also comes through with intelligence and wisdom. So I'm learning from you every day, and I am happy that other people got the chance to listen to you. And for all of you listening in, thanks so much for tuning in today. If you feel inspired about the work that we do, about the experts that work for us at the Rainforest Alliance, You can also check more information on our website, ra.org. Or we also created a new impact hub for those of you who want to take it more onto the action space. And so you can find it at rainforestalliance.org/grow-together, where you can also find, daily tips for your living more sustainably, literally, or also using your voice, always on social as well. So thanks so much for joining. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much again, Juliana and Martin, and to the IKEA Foundation as well for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Bye-bye.